you're looking for a definition of zero-sum thinking, we need only look at the current Trump administration. He only recognizes winners and losers. He elevates himself as the defining winner and demands everyone else who wants to be considered a winner must be a loyal follower. This power and control strategy was crafted by Newt Gingrich in the 1990s to unify the Republicans as a bloc that only voted together. No independent debate, only loyalty mattered. It's us or them. Trump uses this kind of aggressive thinking to denigrate and dehumanize anyone who isn't a follower. This is the opposite of what Unitarian Universalism is all about. We cherish diversity and inclusion. We welcome everyone. We are not about one way or following one person. We believe we can be stronger, more caring, more creative, more joyful by listening expansively to each other, by being willing to be changed by each other, and by a commitment to lifelong growth and development as individuals and as a congregation. What is lost in zero-sum win-lose thinking is the possibility that our differences can be resolved through discussion, negotiation, and compromise that result in win-win solutions. Rather than seeing life as a competition, the survival of the fittest and the extinction of the weak, there is another way that succeeds through cooperation and mutual self-interest. It is a grave error to interpret evolution as the competition of all against all. The species that survive and thrive are the ones that learn how to cooperate and share. The cells that merge to create multicellular organisms are stronger together than they are apart. I think a lot about how to transform zero-sum approaches because we are not immune to that kind of thinking here. It is very easy to fall into. The middle of the 20th century was riven with the humanist-theist controversy. The dualistic approach to belief in God or rejection of belief comes to a height on Sunday morning with the theological language I use that is either theistic or atheistic. I have spent a lifetime carefully crafting language to affirm both these contributions to the diversity of belief and unbelief in our congregations, seeing that diversity as a strength rather than a zero-sum competition. I live it with a deep love of God while rejecting the belief in God and feeling the benefit of being able to draw from both worlds. Where I especially appreciate the search for ways out of zero-sum thinking in our congregations and in American society is around the issue of race. For way too many people who categorize themselves as white, they engage non-whites, maybe not consciously, but very often subliminally, unconsciously, through zero-sum thinking. So when I heard about the book by Heather McGhee titled The Sum of Us, here's the rest of it: What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together, I was immediately attracted to it. Racism grounded in zero-sum thinking misses the tremendous unrealized potential of this nation to show the world the win-win results of a pluralistic approach to society. It is also the tremendous yet unrealized potential of Unitarian Universalism as a religion. McGhee builds her credibility to make this argument by writing and talking publicly about her love of numbers and statistical analysis. She isn't looking for ideological arguments to beat people over the head. She wants to know what the data says. She is grounded in the real world, not in dreams of how things ought to be. She wants to prove her case by using real-world examples of what happens when people come together across race and class lines and work together for the common good. Let's begin by defining the zero-sum thinking problem with a personal example. My sister and I would gleefully open our presents we discovered on Christmas morning under our attractively decorated, freshly cut tree adorned with ancient bubble lights. Once all the packages had been opened, we'd line up our gifts to compare them. We were looking for favoritism. If one of us got more or better gifts than the other, it was a sign that one or the other, or maybe both of our parents, loved one of us more than the other. We rejected the idea that we could be loved equally. It was a competition, and only one of us could win. Zero-sum thinking is rooted in the belief that there is a limited supply. If someone gets more, it will mean I will get less and be at risk of losing something of value. There are only winners and losers. Your gain is my loss. My sister and I were playing out one dimension of this thinking. Parents do have favorite children. My sister and I were always alert to see if my father or mother paid more attention to one of us than the other. I could tell my sister was my dad's favorite. As she went into science and academics, he was a professor. And I had the edge with my mom because we both had health issues and connected empathetically. My parents claimed that they loved us equally, just didn't align with our childish zero-sum thinking. Zero-sum thinking becomes quite dangerous when it is practiced by groups of people against other groups of people. It becomes toxic racist thinking if the groups become categories of people, maybe with ethnic, cultural, or physical traits. While individuals can compete with other individuals with limited effects, when categories of people organize to control or oppress other people, tremendous damage can be done. The problem with zero-sum thinking is its scarcity mentality. As children, my sister and I believed that my parents could only express a limited amount of love. If my sister got more, I got less. It was a false understanding of scarcity. My parents had the capacity for an abundance of love and care for both of us more than we needed maybe even wanted. We each got enough, and there was plenty left over for them to share with their friends and other relatives. There was enough love in our community, in our family, for my mother to run for state legislature, wearing out several pairs of shoes, going door to door campaigning for people's votes. European elites brought the zero-sum frame with them to America in the 1600s, wanting to build a life for themselves. They didn't see any us when they encountered indigenous people. What they saw instead of people was land to exploit for profit. They didn't see Africans brought to work in the land as collaborators in making the land agriculturally productive. They dehumanized them as slaves into an underclass of permanently enslaved people, reduced to a cost on a balance sheet. They didn't sense affinity with the poor Europeans who had come before them to work the land. In their minds, these folks could occupy a buffer class defined as white and given social status and privilege that separated them from black. And Americanized racism was born and grew deep roots in this land. For group identity and social status dominates collective opportunity, economic opportunity, and interracial cooperation just about every time, much to author Heather McGhee's distress. McGhee's book does an excellent job of demonstrating how racism is deeply reinforced by zero-sum thinking to the detriment of whites. This is so important because most people who identify as white have no clue how they are harming themselves by cooperating with the ubiquitous white supremacy culture all around us. They believe they are better off. What they don't recognize is the poverty they have created for themselves by zero-sum thinking. Investment in public goods such as education, healthcare, and public transit has been in decline for a long time. It comes under the guise of rejecting big government, but that doesn't tell the full story. The decline in public investment tracks the gradual increase in access to those goods by people categorized as non-white. That's because for most of the history of this nation, the beneficiaries of America's free public investments were whites only. One glaring illustration of this McGhee features in her work are the decline of public pools. From the beginning of the 20th century, Americans started building public pools. Towns and cities competed to build bigger and bigger ones. In the 1930s, Works Progress Administration built hundreds of them. McGhee writes, by World War II, the country's 2,000 pools were glittering symbols of a new commitment by local officials to the equality of life of its residents, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to socialize together for free. Officials envisioned the distinctly American phenomenon of the grand public resort pools as social melting pots. Like free public grade schools, public pools were part of the Americanizing project intended to overcome ethnic divisions and cohere a common identity. And it worked for those categorized white. Those divisions they wanted to overcome, unfortunately, didn't include skin color. The fight to integrate pools during the 1950s brought out a strong racist energy of resistance. The court said the pools should be integrated. The reaction by whites was horrific, as if black children who dared to enter a pool had contaminated them with a toxic chemical. Rather than share pools, the cities and towns drained them, filled them in, and in some cases paved them over or turned them into fields of growing grass. People started building them in their backyards, and private exclusionary clubs formed to build pools so they could keep them segregated. Non-wealthy whites were often left to suffer the hot summers without the refreshing public spaces of free public pools. Yet they supported their elimination. Their segregated white identity was far more important than the public pool to enjoy. Where most working class folks who identify as white might see the greatest benefit of cross-racial affiliation is unionization. Industrialists have long attempted to break strikes by recruiting black, Hispanic, and immigrant workers to cross picket lines. Early union organizers realized that they had to bring everyone together to build the solidarity needed to hold out long enough to cause enough pain for the owners to get them to negotiate in good faith. McGee researched the efforts to organize a union in a Nissan plant in Mississippi. The workers had many grievances that brought them together, but the biggest barrier to voting for the union was race. The perception of the white workers was that this would benefit black workers. And if they were going to benefit, the white workers voted no. Racial identity was far more important to many of the white workers than the potential benefits they might gain through unionization. The unionization effort failed by just a few hundred votes. Race was a key factor in that defeat. If the blacks were for it, the whites would vote against it. Zero-sum choice. McGee's book is an inventory of zero-sum losses for white folks who vote against their economic health and social best interests. For what? To be able to identify with rich capitalists like our president. The real elites who deftly feed their illusions of white identity and superiority, even as non-rich whites' well-being steadily decreases. And there is always a transference of blame from the real agents of their misery, the wealthy elites, to the discriminated against and oppressed at the bottom, especially black folks. It doesn't have to be this way. There is another story to tell. There is a story of the many benefits of social solidarity that crosses race and class. When I speak about the dismantling of white supremacy culture, this is the social benefit I am after. Dismantling these false zero-sum impulses and rejecting them with some of us approaches and attitudes has the potential to support the greatness of the American vision. The ideals of a pluralistic nation, of unlimited opportunity and equal justice remains the unrealized dream of this nation. November 9th, I'll tell that story, a story lifted up by the ones who have suffered the most deprivation. We will honor that dream of who America can be and has yet to realize.